The rain was torrential, a freezing November downpour that soaked through my thin silk robe in seconds. I stood on the front lawn barefoot in the mud, staring at the pile of clothes my husband Mark had just hurled from the second-story window. "Happy anniversary, you barren waste of space," Mark shouted from the porch, his voice booming over the thunder. He wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm, rubbing a very pregnant belly, was a woman I recognized. Jessica, my yoga instructor. "Get out, Sarah," Mark sneered, throwing my suitcase down the steps. It cracked open, spilling my belongings into the puddles. "Jessica is moving in. She's carrying my son. A real heir. Not like you." "But, Mark." I shivered, hugging myself against the cold. "This is my house. We built this life together." "Wrong." He laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "I pay the bills. My name is on the electric bill, the gas bill, the internet. I'm the man of this house. And you're just a squatter who couldn't give me a child in 5 years." Jessica giggled, a sound that grated on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. "Don't worry, Sarah. I'll take good care of our home. Maybe I'll even turn your craft room into the nursery. It has the best light." Mark slammed the heavy oak door in my face. The click of the deadbolt felt like a gunshot. I stood there, rain mixing with the hot tears on my face. 5 years of marriage. 5 years of fertility treatments, of hope, of building a future. All gone in an instant, replaced by a younger woman and a belly full of betrayal. But as I looked up at the window of the master bedroom, where the lights had just turned on, something inside me shifted. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was cold, hard rage. Mark thought he held all the cards. He thought his name on the utility bills meant ownership. He didn't know about the trust fund. He didn't know about the LLC. And he certainly didn't know that the nursery Jessica was so excited about was currently recording every word they said in 4K resolution. "My name is Sarah Vance. I am 32 years old. And tonight, my husband didn't just end our marriage. He started a war he couldn't possibly win." Before I tell you what the hidden cameras revealed, please hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments, what's the worst anniversary gift you've ever received? Being evicted has to be in the top 10, right? I gathered my soaked clothes, shoving them haphazardly into the broken suitcase. My hands were numb, but my mind was racing. I dragged my luggage down the driveway, away from the dream home I had designed, paid for, and loved. I didn't call a friend. I didn't call my parents. I called the one person who knew the truth about the house. My lawyer, Mr. Sterling. "Sarah." His voice was groggy. It was 11 p.m. "Is everything all right?" "He did it," I said, my teeth chattering. "He kicked me out. He moved her in." "I'm sorry, Sarah." Mr. Sterling sighed. "But are you safe?" "I'm in my car," I said, turning up the heat. "I'm safe. But I want to execute the protocol. Tonight." "Sarah, we talked about this. The scorched earth protocol is irreversible. Are you sure you don't want to wait until morning emotions are high?" "He threw my grandmother's quilt in the mud, Arthur," I said, looking at the sodden patchwork fabric lying in a puddle. "He called me barren. He brought his mistress into my home on our anniversary." There was a pause on the line. Then the steel in Arthur's voice returned. "Understood. I'll have the eviction notice drafted within the hour. Do you want police involvement?" "Not yet," I said, watching shadows move in the living room window. "I want to see what they do. I want to see how comfortable they get." And Arthur checked the server. "I think camera 3 in the living room has the best angle." "I'm pulling up the feed now," Arthur said. The sound of typing filled the line. "Oh. Oh my. What is it? You're going to want to see this, Sarah. It seems your husband's heir might come with some complications." I drove to a nearby motel, the neon vacancy sign buzzing in the rain. It was a far cry from the heated floors and marble countertops of my home, but it had a roof and Wi-Fi. As I sat on the lumpy bed drying my hair with a scratchy towel, I opened my laptop and logged into the secure server. Mark had always been bad with money. When we met, he was charming, ambitious, and $50,000 in debt. I was the quiet one, the diligent saver, the daughter of a real estate mogul who taught me one rule: never let a man control your assets. When we bought the house 3 years ago, Mark had generously offered to handle the utilities to build his credit score. I let him. It made him feel important. But the down payment? That was me. The mortgage, paid by a shell company, SV Holdings, which I owned 100%. The deed. It wasn't in our names. It was in the name of the trust my father set up before he died. Mark thought we were co-owners. In reality, he was a tenant who hadn't paid rent in 3 years. I clicked on the live feed from the living room. Mark was pouring champagne, my expensive Dom Perignon, that I was saving for a promotion, into 2 glasses. Jessica was lounging on the sofa, her feet up on the coffee table. To us, Mark toasted, clinking his glass against hers. And to little Mark Jr., Jessica giggled, taking a sip. You were so strong, babe. The way you handled her, it was kinda sexy. She had to go, Mark said, sitting down next to her. She was dead weight, always nagging about budgets, always crying about the IVF failing. It was depressing. My stomach churned. The IVF failing. He made it sound like I had failed a math test, not suffered through months of hormone injections and heartbreak. Well, you don't have to worry about that anymore, Jessica cooed, rubbing his arm. Now you have me. And this house? It's huge. My mom is going to be so jealous. It's all yours, babe, Mark said expansively. I'm going to put your name on the deed next week. I snorted. Good luck with that, Mark. You can't put a name on a deed you don't have. But then the conversation took a turn. Mark went into the kitchen to get more champagne. Jessica picked up her phone. She dialed a number, putting it on speaker so she could fix her nails. Hey, babe, a man's voice answered. Not Mark's. It's done, Jessica whispered, glancing toward the kitchen. He kicked her out. We're in. Nice, the man said. Did he buy the baby story? Hook, line, and sinker? Jessica laughed. He thinks he's super sperm. He doesn't suspect a thing. I froze. And the money? The man asked. He says he owns the house outright, Jessica said. He says it's worth at least $2 million. Once we get married, I'll convince him to take out a home equity loan. Or sell it. Then we take the cash and run to Mexico just like we planned. Perfect, the man said. I love you, Jess. You're a genius. I know. Love you too, Mike. Gotta go. The Mark is coming back. She hung up just as Mark walked back in with the bottle. Who are you talking to? Mark asked. Just my mom. Jessica smiled sweetly, telling her the good news. I sat back on the motel bed, stunned. Mark wasn't just a cheater, he was a mark. He was being played by a con artist who was pregnant with another man's baby. The irony was delicious. It was perfect. But it also meant I had to act fast. If Jessica convinced him to try and take out a loan, the bank would flag the discrepancy in ownership. They would find out I owned the house. And then the game would be over too soon. I needed to let them dig their grave a little deeper. The next morning, I didn't go to the house. I went to the bank. Not my bank. Mark's bank. As his wife for now, I still had access to our joint checking account. The one he used to pay the bills he was so proud of. I walked up to the teller. I'd like to make a withdrawal, I said. Everything. Close the account. The teller typed for a moment. Ma'am, there's only $400 in here. Of course. He'd spent it all on Jessica. That's fine, I said. I'll take it. $400 wouldn't get me far, but it would buy me a new outfit and a good lunch. More importantly, it would trigger a notification on Mark's phone. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, my phone blew up. Mark. What the hell are you doing? You stole my money. Mark. Put it back. Or I'm calling the cops. Mark. Jessica needs vitamins. You're selfish. I didn't reply. I just sipped my coffee and watched the next phase of his plan unfold on the hidden camera feed on my phone. Mark was pacing the kitchen, furious. She drained the account, that petty witch. It's okay, babe. Jessica soothed him. We don't need her pennies. We have the house. Let's go to the bank today. Let's get that loan. We can get $500,000 against the equity. At least, Mark said, puffing out his chest. Let's do it. They left the house. I called Arthur. They're heading to First National. They want a HELOC home equity line of credit. They won't get far. Arthur chuckled. The deed is flagged. Any inquiry will come straight to me. Let them try, I said. Let them fill out the application. Let them commit bank fraud on paper. 2 hours later, I got a text from Arthur. A photo of a loan application. Applicant, Mark Vance. Co-applicant, Jessica Miller. Property owner, Mark Vance. He had checked the box, sole owner. He had forged my signature on a quitclaim deed that didn't even exist in the system. He's done, Arthur said when I called him back. Attempted mortgage fraud, forgery. That's 5 to 10 years, Sarah. And Jessica? She signed as a co-applicant. She claimed the house was marital property. She's an accomplice. Good, I said. But not good enough. I want him to know. I want him to know that he lost everything for a lie. What's the plan? Tonight, I said. They're throwing a housewarming party. Jessica invited all her friends. Mark invited his golf buddies. They're celebrating. And I'm going to crash it, I said, with the police and a DNA test kit. The rain had stopped, leaving the night air crisp and cold. My house. My house was lit up like a Christmas tree. Cars lined the driveway, spilling out onto the street. Mark's beaten-up sedan was parked next to a flashy convertible I assumed belonged to one of Jessica's friends. I sat in my car down the block, watching the shadows dance in the windows. I could hear music thumping. They were partying in the home I had meticulously decorated, drinking the wine I had collected, celebrating my eviction. "Are you ready, Ms. Vance?" I turned to look at the man sitting in the passenger seat. Officer Miller. He was off duty, technically working security detail for Arthur's firm, but he had brought his badge and 2 on-duty colleagues who were parked in a cruiser around the corner. "I'm ready," I said, smoothing down my dress. It was black, sleek, and funeral appropriate. Because tonight, I was burying my marriage. "Remember," Miller said. "Let them talk. Let them admit to it. We need the confession on the body cam." "Don't worry." I smiled grimly. "Mark loves to brag." I got out of the car. I walked up the driveway, my heels clicking on the pavement. I didn't knock. I used my key. The door swung open. The living room was packed. People I barely knew, Mark's gym buddies, Jessica's yoga clients, were drinking red wine over my cream carpets. Someone had put a cigarette out in my favorite succulent planter. "Hey!" Mark shouted over the music. He was standing on the coffee table holding a bottle of tequila. "Everyone listen up to new beginnings, to the house, and to my beautiful fiancée, Jessica." The crowd cheered. Jessica, wearing a tight dress that accentuated her bump, beamed up at him. "And to my ex-wife." Mark laughed, slurring his words. "Who is probably sleeping in her car right now. Thanks for the house, Sarah." The crowd laughed. It was a mean, ugly sound. "Actually, Mark," I said, my voice cutting through the noise, "I'm sleeping at the Ritz tonight, on your dime." The music stopped. Heads turned. Mark almost fell off the table. "Sarah," he sputtered, "what are you doing here? I told you to get out." "I came for my things," I said calmly, stepping into the room. "And to give you a housewarming gift." "We don't want your gifts," Jessica shrieked. "Get her out of here, Mark. She's trespassing." "Trespassing?" I raised an eyebrow. "That's a big word for someone who doesn't pay rent." Mark jumped down from the table, his face red. "This is my house. I signed the papers today. The loan is approved." "Is it?" I asked. "Did the bank tell you that? Or did you just assume because you haven't been arrested yet?" "What are you talking about?" Mark demanded, stepping closer aggressively. "I own this place. I pay the bills." "You pay the electric bill," I corrected, "which, by the way, is 2 months overdue. I own the deed. Or rather, SV Holdings owns the deed." "And guess who owns SV Holdings?" Mark froze. The gears in his head were turning, slowly grinding against the rust of his arrogance. You can't own it. You're a teacher's daughter. You don't have money." "I have an inheritance, Mark," I said. "From my grandfather. The one you never asked about because you were too busy talking about yourself. This house. It was a cash purchase. 3 years ago." The guests were whispering now. Phones were coming out. The mood had shifted from party to spectacle. "Liar!" Jessica screamed. "She's lying. Mark, throw her out." "I'm not leaving," I said. "But you are. Both of you. Tonight." "Make me?" Mark sneered, raising a hand as if to strike me again. "Okay," I said. I nodded to the door. Officer Miller and his 2 uniformed colleagues walked in. "Mark Vance?" Miller asked. Mark paled. "Yeah. We have a warrant for your arrest," Miller said, pulling out handcuffs. "Attempted mortgage fraud, forgery, and domestic assault." "What?" Mark backed away, knocking over a lamp. "I didn't forge anything." "We have the application, Mark," I said. "You signed my name. You checked sole owner. That's a felony." But, Mark stammered, looking at Jessica. "We needed the money for the baby. For our son." "Ah, yes," I said. "The baby." I turned to Jessica. She was trying to edge toward the back door, but a uniformed officer blocked her path. "Jessica Miller?" I said. "Or should I say, Jessica. The womb for hire." Jessica's eyes widened. "I did some digging," I said, pulling a file from my purse. "Turns out you have a record, Jessica. Con games in Florida, fraud in Texas, and 3 paternity suits in the last 4 years." I tossed the file onto the coffee table. Photos spilled out. Mugshots of Jessica. And a photo of a man named Mike. Who is Mike? I asked. Jessica stayed silent, her breathing shallow. Mike, I continued, is the man you were on the phone with yesterday. The man you told, and I quote, he thinks he's super sperm. He doesn't suspect a thing. The man you planned to run away to Mexico with. Mark looked at Jessica. The color drained from his face until he looked like a ghost. Jessica, he whispered. Is that true? No, Jessica cried, but her eyes were darting around the room looking for an escape. She's lying. She's jealous because she's barren. I have the recording, I said, holding up my phone. Do you want me to play it for the room? Or do you want to tell Mark who the father really is? Jessica stared at me with pure hatred. Then she looked at Mark. And she laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. You idiot! She spat at Mark. You really thought you could get me pregnant? You with your cheap beer and your leased car? Mike is 10 times the man you are. Mark looked like he had been punched in the gut. He stumbled back, collapsing onto the sofa. But the ultrasound? The nursery? Props, Jessica sneered. All of it. I needed a place to stay until Mike got out of jail, and you were an easy mark. Desperate to prove you were a man. Pathetic. The room was silent. Even the drunkest guest was sober now. Take them, I said to Officer Miller. Wait, Mark cried as the officers grabbed him. Sarah, please. She tricked me. I didn't know I love you. I only did it because I was confused. You weren't confused when you hit me, I said coldly. You weren't confused when you threw my clothes in the mud. You made your choice, Mark. Now live with it. Sarah, he wailed as they dragged him out. I'm sorry, don't let them take me. Jessica didn't scream. She walked out with her head held high, looking bored. Whatever, she muttered. The food here sucked anyway. As the police cars drove away, lights flashing against the dark suburban street, the guests began to scramble. They put down their drinks, grabbed their coats, and fled like cockroaches when the lights come on. Within 10 minutes, the house was empty. Just me. And the mess. I looked around the living room. Wine stains on the carpet. Broken glass. The smell of stale smoke. It was ruined. But it was mine. I walked to the kitchen and grabbed a trash bag. I started clearing the counter. Beer bottles, pizza boxes, a best dad ever mug Mark must have bought for himself. I threw the mug into the trash. It shattered satisfyingly. My phone rang. It was Arthur. Is it done? It's done, I said, my voice trembling slightly as the adrenaline faded. They're gone. Are you okay, Sarah? I looked out the window at the rain starting to fall again. I will be. Arthur. Sell the house. Sell it. Yes. I can't live here. It smells like betrayal. Sell it. Sell everything in it. The furniture, the art, the dishes. I want it gone. And the proceeds. Put it in the trust, I said. I'm going to take a trip. A long one. Somewhere warm. Somewhere where no one knows my name. Understood, Arthur said gently. You did good, Sarah. Your father would be proud. Thanks, Arthur. I hung up. I locked the front door. I walked down the driveway to my car. I didn't look back. 3 months later. The sun in Bali hit different. It wasn't the gray, accusing light of a courtroom or the harsh fluorescent glare of a police station. It was warm, golden, and healing. I sat on the terrace of my rented villa overlooking the rice paddies. My laptop was open, but for the first time in years, I wasn't checking bank statements or tracking my husband's location. I was writing. Not a legal brief. A journal. Day 90 of freedom, I typed. The nightmares have stopped. Mostly. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Arthur. Subject: final sentencing update. I hesitated. Did I want to know? Did I need to know? I clicked it. Mark had pled guilty. His lawyer, a public defender who looked like he hadn't slept in a week, had advised him against going to trial. The evidence was overwhelming. The forged loan application, the recorded threats, the assault. The sentence: 5 years in federal prison for bank fraud, plus 2 years concurrent for domestic assault. He would be eligible for parole in 3, but the real punishment wasn't the prison time, it was the debt. The bank had sued him for the attempted fraud. His credit score was destroyed. He had declared bankruptcy, but federal fraud judgments aren't dischargeable. He would owe money for the rest of his life. And Jessica? She had turned on Mark instantly. She claimed he coerced her, that she was a victim of his controlling behavior. But the recording I played, the one where she called him an idiot and planned to run away with Mike, destroyed her defense. She got 3 years for conspiracy and identity theft. Plus, she was extradited to Florida to face charges for her previous cons. I closed the laptop. It was done. The chapter was closed. But there was one loose thread. One thing that still ached in the quiet moments. The baby. Not Jessica's fake baby. My baby. The one I never had. The dream Mark had used to torment me. Barren. The word still echoed in my head. I walked down to the village market. The air smelled of incense and grilled corn. I bought a coconut and sat on a bench watching the local children play soccer in the dust. They were laughing, shouting alive. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, ran up to me. She had big brown eyes and a scraped knee. She held up a flower, a frangipani. "For you," she said in broken English. I took the flower. "Terima kasih." I smiled. "Thank you." She ran back to her friends. I felt a pang in my chest. A longing so deep it hurt. Sarah. I looked up. A man was standing there. He was tall-tanned, wearing a linen shirt and holding a surfboard. He looked familiar. "David?" I asked. David was my neighbor back home. Or rather, he lived 3 streets over. We had met at the dog park a few times when I walked my golden retriever Buster, who was now living his best life with my parents while I traveled. David was quiet kind, the opposite of Mark. "I thought it was you." He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "What are you doing in Ubud, escaping?" I said honestly. "You, chasing waves," he said, "and maybe escaping a little too." He sat down next to me. "I heard about what happened. With Mark." The whole town heard. I flinched. "I bet they did." "They're on your side, you know," David said gently. "Everyone knew Mark was a jerk. We were just waiting for you to see it." "I saw it," I whispered. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted the fairy tale." "Fairy tales are boring," David said. "Real life is messy, but the ending is usually better because you earned it." We spent the afternoon talking. Really talking. Not about money or houses or status. About books. About travel. About the best way to cook a fish. For the first time in 5 years, I felt seen. Not as a wife. Not as a bank account. Not as a disappointment. Just Sarah. 6 months later. I was back in the States. Not in my old town, but in a small coastal city in Maine. I had bought a cottage, small, cozy, with a garden that needed work. I paid cash. I had started a new business. Not real estate. A bakery. The Second Chance Cafe. It was busy. People liked my scones. They liked the quiet atmosphere. David had moved to Maine too. He opened a surf shop down the street. We weren't living together, but we had dinner every night. We were taking it slow. Healing. One morning, I felt off. Nauseous. Tired. I thought it was the flu. Or maybe I had eaten bad shellfish. I went to the doctor. A new doctor, one who didn't know my history of failures. She ran some tests. She came back into the room holding a clipboard, a strange look on her face. "Sarah," she said, "how long have you been trying to conceive?" "I haven't," I said. "I mean, I tried for years with my ex-husband. They said I was incompatible. Unexplained infertility." The doctor smiled. "Well, sometimes stress is the biggest contraceptive, and sometimes it's just the wrong partner." "What do you mean? You're pregnant, Sarah? 8 weeks." The room spun. Pregnant, but the treatments, the injections. "Nature found a way," she said. "Or maybe you just finally found peace." I walked out of the clinic in a daze. Pregnant. Me, the barren waste of space. I drove to David's shop. He was waxing a board. He looked up, saw my face, and dropped the wax. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "I'm not barren," I said, tears streaming down my face. He understood instantly. He rushed over and hugged me, lifting me off my feet. "We're going to have a baby," he laughed. "A little grommet." "Yes," I sobbed into his shoulder. "We are." 2 years later, I sat on the porch of my cottage rocking a sleeping toddler in my arms. His name was Leo. He had David's eyes and my chin. The phone rang inside. I let it go to voicemail. I knew who it was. Mark was up for parole next month. He had been writing letters, begging me to advocate for his release, saying he was a changed man, saying he had found God, saying he still loved me. I never read them. I burned them in the fireplace. But today, I picked up the phone when it rang again. "Hello. Sarah." It was Mark's voice, rougher, older. "Did you get my letter?" "I did," I said calmly. "Please," he rasped. "I can't stay in here. It's hell." If you just write a letter to the board, tell them I'm not a threat. You are a threat, Mark, I said. Not to me, not anymore, but to anyone who trusts you. I've changed, he cried. I have nothing. Jessica took everything. She testified against me to get a reduced sentence. She ruined me. No, Mark, I said, looking down at my son's peaceful face. You ruined yourself. You chose greed over love. You chose a lie over a life. Sarah, please. I heard you have a kid. Is it mine? I laughed. It was a genuine, happy laugh. No, Mark, he's not yours. He's mine, and he will never know your name. I hung up. I blocked the number. I looked out at the ocean. David was walking up the path from the beach carrying a bag of groceries. He waved. I waved back. The house behind me was small. It wasn't a mansion. It didn't have heated floors. But it was warm. It was full of love. And it was mine. I was Sarah Vance. I was a mother. I was a survivor. And I had finally truly come home. Maybe this story touched something inside you, the pain of betrayal or the hope of a second chance. Sarah's journey teaches us that sometimes the things we think are breaking us are actually clearing the path for something better. Mark called her barren, using her deepest pain as a weapon. But in the end, her life was the most fertile ground of all, growing a business, a new love, and a family. It's a powerful reminder that toxic people don't just steal your joy, they can physically make you sick. And leaving them can be the cure. The house was just a building. Mark wanted the walls, the roof, the status. Sarah wanted the home. And in the end, she realized she could build a home anywhere, as long as the foundation was truth. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to burn your life down to build a better one, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced a miracle after leaving a toxic situation? Or maybe you just love seeing a cheater get caught in 4K. And please tell me where you're watching from, whether it's a cottage in Maine or a city apartment. I read every comment, and knowing you're out there listening gives me the inspiration to find and tell more stories of resilience, justice, and the beautiful surprise of a happy ending. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Remember, you are not defined by who left you. You are defined by who stays. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.